Okay, so here we are 1 year down the track, and this is all the current Nisi equipment that I'm using. So just going through, I'm using Sony A7R as well as the 5D Mark IV. The original adapter ring is still what I'm using, so the 77mm is good for my 16 to 35, the 72mm for my 135, which I don't use very much, and the 67mm, which I use a lot for the 70 to 200. And this is the 82mm native adapter ring and the filter holder itself. So all original, and I've got no issues with how they've held up in the last year. In terms of the filters that I'm using at the moment, I'm using a 4-stop soft GND, a 3-stop soft, and a 3-stop hard. I've had these for a year now, and as an example of wear and tear, you can see that in the important areas where it counts, there's actually no scratches. There's only scratches at the rims where you're putting it in and out of the filter holder. So I haven't had to change these or request Nisi to replace them because they literally haven't affected the image quality at all. So in terms of concerns for how much they might scratch compared to resin filters, I haven't really noticed anything. Now in terms of the actual ND filters, it's important to note which strength to use in the field. This is a 3-stop, which I would often use just to slow exposures down to maybe 1 or 2 seconds. So maybe waterfall in forest shots or at the beach when it's not quite sunset yet. I might use this to slow it down as an example that I'll show you in a picture. The 6-stop is the one I would mainly use at just around sunset. And once again, this is a year old and you can't see any scratches on it. The only thing that has moved around a bit is when I've accidentally slotted it into the filter slot, not this way, but that way, because when you start doing it that way, then it starts to push it out. So just be careful when you put it in the filter slot to put the thin slots vertically. The 10-stop, I tend to use at golden hour, so just after sunrise or just before sunset. And once again, it's been pretty tough. I haven't had the need to replace it. There's no scratches on it at all. And I would use this to drag exposures out to typically 1-2 minutes or so, around, as I said, just after sunrise, just before sunset. And the 15-stop I've had since earlier this year, which is really good for daytime photography or well after sunrise, well before sunset, late afternoon. And with that one you can drag the exposures out to several minutes, and all of these barely have any cast. The one filter I haven't had much success with is the 20-stop, because even during the day I'm finding that it's pushing exposures way too long.
With regard to the cast of Nisi filters, I thought I'd give you an example. So this is Kingscote Pier, taken with no ND filter on, and you can see the position of the sun is well after dawn. And if you look at this, is just straight import. So this is the way the raw file looks, and that's taken with a 4-stop soft GND at the top there. If you look at the 10-stop, so this is a direct import as well, and you compare the two. 10-stop, this is shot in auto white balance, practically no cast at all. And then when you go to the 15-stop, now I'd probably underexpose this a bit. You can see again, the light conditions have changed a bit, but there isn't really noticeable cast. Maybe it's cooled down a bit, but maybe it's the light changing. Or maybe you might notice a bit of light fall off around the edges for the 15-stop. But I also did have a balaclava around the edge of it. So overall, the main advantage of Nisi over Lee, for instance, is that with the high density ND filters, you really see very little cast. So once again, no filter, 10-stop, 15-stop, raw imports. Regarding the 20-stop ND filter, I haven't really been successful in terms of getting a shot that I really like, but this is taken in the middle of the day, which I think is when you would be trying to take shots with the 20-stop. This is taken without any ND filters, so as you can see, ISO 200 f8 1 and 250 seconds. Now I only had limited time, so I couldn't stay there forever. So what I did was, if it was 1/250th, 20 stops would actually, if you calculate that out, that's actually 525 seconds. That would be the equivalent exposure for a 20 stop. I went slightly below that at 482, and you can see that it's actually quite bright. So if you reduce it by about 1 stop 1.5 stops. I think the 20 stop that I have is probably 18.5, 19 stops, so not quite 20 stops. It's probably a good thing because you probably don't need 20 stops, but if you look at the neutrality of it, probably a slight warming aspect to it as well, but certainly nothing that's overly distracting or difficult to correct. So once again, the 20 stop I think is good for very bright daylight conditions where you have slow moving clouds such as this, and I think this would have been a more effective shot had there been more cloud in the sky, but unfortunately we didn't get very many clear days like this on this last trip, so I will keep working on getting a successful 20 stop ND filter shot.
That go directly onto the lenses, so the Nisi Htc Circular Polarizers, which I use for handheld shots, and this is the landscape polarizer, which really extracts a lot of color from the scenes, even when there's not a lot of color to be had.
Just a brief word about Nisi's landscape polarizer. This image here was taken from Lake Agnes, which is near Lake Louise, and really to the naked eye you could not really see any kind of color in this particular area here, but you can see with the landscape polarizer it's really brought it out to a large degree, something that you wouldn't necessarily see to the naked eye, as well as definition around the clouds here. So that's definitely a positive for the polarizer. And look, if I were to criticize it to some degree, this image here, which hasn't been edited at all, if you look very closely, you can see that sometimes when you're shooting all white, it can do a little bit of blue fringing and purple fringing at other parts of the image. Now, it was a weird light morning, but I only ever got this phenomenon when I was shooting all white. So just to emphasize that if I push the vibrance up to 100, you can see just some different color fringing going on there. But otherwise, it is a very solid piece of equipment that I use all the time instead of the normal polarizer now, and I would strongly advise that you upgrade your kit.
Okay, in terms of other accessories, this is my bag of Kim wipes, which in combination with the glass filters means that I can get clean shots most of the time, even when there's condensation and sea spray around. I don't tend to use these very much anymore, but they're cable releases, and the reason for that is the 5D Mark IV's got a touch screen for timed releases and a time-lapse function as well, so that kind of just sits idle in my bag for the time being. This is the hard filter holder for Nisi, which I use exclusively, and it's been very good even in carry-on baggage and so forth, and none of the filters have ever been damaged. So these have 6 slots, so I usually choose to go out with me 3 ND filters and 3 GND filters, and these sit on my waist, carrying all of this equipment for me in the field. Now you might wonder how easy it is to put all the stuff on. So if I'm about to rush on for a sunset and I'm eager to get stuff on, I'll just do it in real time without a rush. So the first thing I would do is I would pick the 77mm to put on the 16-35, screw that on. If I'm using the 24-70, there's no need for that step. The next thing, landscape polarizer usually lives on this adapter ring for me anyway, so this step here is not really needed, but as you can see it goes on pretty quickly, and then you screw this on and that goes on nice and snugly. And lastly, the adapter ring. I had concerns about how small that nut was there, but it's literally never fallen off for me, so those concerns are kind of baseless really, and that fits on quite snugly, easily as well. Usually I do this when it's on a tripod, so bit of fiddling around because I'm not used to doing it not on a tripod. Now it's a reasonably warm day today, and I found that on warm days the ND filters slot in quite easily. So the 3-stop, for instance, is the tightest of them for some reason, and you can see it just slots in very nicely. On very cold days I find that in the field I can't slot it out very easily, so instead of like potentially knocking everything apart, I usually just take it off and slot it out outside of the filter holder so that I'm not causing any damage, but no problems there at all. As I said, just remember to put the thin slots of the light blockers on the side in the right orientation, or you'll start ripping off that Velcro there. So overall, very easy to set up, very durable, and I'm happy with all of this stuff 1 year down the track. The only piece of equipment I kind of have some concerns about is how I'm going to use the 20 stop effectively. But otherwise, I would use all these with a lot of frequency, and probably the 6 and the 10 are probably the ones I use the most often. And these live on my lenses when I'm not shooting a dedicated tripod shoot. So a year on down the track, I'm pretty happy with Nisi filters as they are, and hopefully they continue to innovate and create new products that I'll be able to test and put to use in the field.